Welcome back to Grow with Miss Nancy. Don't you just love camping? I just love it, and being able to sit around the campfire and tell stories. And we've been telling stories about Daniel, and here is another one. You probably heard it before, but maybe you haven't, and that makes it that much more special. Remember last week we talked about the king who was Nebuchadnezzar, and he is the one who brought the Jewish people to Babylon, and they were slaves. And Daniel and some of his friends were made high up in the government because they were so smart and they were so healthy and they were so good. And Nebuchadnezzar was really enjoying these young men. Well, it turns out that after a while, Nebuchadnezzar was no longer king and his son Belshazzar took over. Belshazzar was kind of a prideful fella, and he actually wanted one day to have a big party. I mean, he invited thousands to this party, and they were drinking and they were carrying on. And all of a sudden, Belshazzar got this fabulous idea, so he thought, why don't you go get those golden cups that had been in the temple in Jerusalem and bring them here, and we're gonna drink wine out of those cups, and we're gonna worship our gods of stone and wood and gold and silver. And that's exactly what they did. Well, you can imagine God did not like that idea. And before you know it, suddenly this hand appeared out of nowhere, a big hand that wrote on the wall with a finger. And it said, Meeny, Meeny, Tekel, Parson. What in the world was that? The king didn't know, but it sure was spooky being able to see this hand come out of nowhere, writing on the wall. Oh, he was scared, so scared that in the Bible it said his knees were knocking together and his legs wouldn't hold him up. He called all of his wise men and his astrologers and his magicians to come and tell him, what did this mean? And they had no clue. He was scared to death. The king Belshazzar was scared to death. And finally, the queen mother, meaning his mama, said, you know, there is a wise man that could interpret dreams, and he's one of the Jewish people, and his name is Daniel, and maybe he knows what this means. So they called for Daniel, because of course Daniel was not at this party, and they called for Daniel to come in, and Daniel took one look at that, and he said, I know what that is. And he said, your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, was given by our great high God the power to make people be afraid of him. God gave him the power that if he wanted to kill somebody, he could kill somebody. If he wanted to save their life, he could save their life. If he wanted to honor somebody, he could honor somebody. And if he wanted to disgrace them, he could do that. But when he got all puffed up with pride, God brought him low, and he ended up living with the donkeys and eating grass. And he said, that was the finger of God writing on that wall. And what that means is, the meeny, meeny part is your days of this kingdom were numbered, and your time is up. The tekel part means you have been weighed in the balance and you didn't measure up. And the parson part means your kingdom is going to be split up and divided into many different pieces. King Belshazzar did not know it, but at that very, very moment, his enemy, King Darius, was tunneling under the city walls where the water would come in, but the water level was very low in that river, and all those soldiers could sneak under the wall and get into where the palace was, and they came and took over that very night, and Belshazzar was killed. Pretty amazing story, isn't it? King Darius realized that Daniel was a very great person, and he kept him in his government and made him very high up. Now, our big idea for this week is, I can keep learning because God is with me. You know, Belshazzar should have learned what his dad Nebuchadnezzar learned. Nebuchadnezzar learned, you get puffed up with pride, God will bring you down. Belshazzar learned the same thing, but it was really kind of late for him, wasn't it? Because King Darius was coming in and took over. We can keep learning too, and that's why we want to learn about these Bible stories, because every single one of them have a good message for us. God is with us, and we need to keep learning about God and what He wants for our lives. And we can have a better life because of that. Gee, I'm so glad you were here again today. I hope you come back next week, because we're still going to tell stories around the campfire. And I think you're going to like this next story about Daniel. So come next week. See ya. Bye.